Hello friends, it's your favorite neighborhood nerd Simone, and I'm here today to share my new reading journal, book journal with you. I just want to quickly recap what I've used before and then show you where I am right now. So in 2023, I wanted to log the books that I was reading, and I pulled out this weekly calendar from Traveler's Company, this weekly calendar, and decided that I would just use one of these days of the week for each book that I was reading. And this is how that turned out. I logged the name of the book, the author, how I read it, and then basically just one sentence of how I liked it. Sometimes when I wasn't, I wouldn't continue doing this, and so I just didn't remember what I thought about the book, and so I only wrote the title so that I would be able to catch up, and then when I felt like it again, I would write in here again. This was 2023, and then in 2024 I just continued on with the book. But I knew that in 2025 I wanted something a tiny bit different. There's still some pages left, so I didn't fill it all the way up. And I moved into this here. I don't have the planner with me anymore. I ripped out all the pages. This is one of the pages that is left. And the noise that you're hearing, just in case it's bothering you, is my puppy Max. He is biting on a bone. Actually, it's an antler. This, for some reason, did not entice me to log my books at all this year. So I knew I wanted to do something different. And I've been humming and hawing about what I want to do every time I would see Jenny McGarvey's reading journal. And I will put a screenshot of one of her entries up here, but also will link her Instagram profile. It is AJ McGarvey. In the description box down below. I was like, oh, I want to do this so badly. This looks so good. And when they announced Everyday Explorers Co. with Jenny made this set the review journal. So it's a stamp set and a notebook that is laid out the way that Jenny is using her, I think it was a dot grid notebook that she got from Everyday Explorers Co. Several years ago. She draws these lines in herself, and Christine from Everyday Explorers Co. made a book that has that exact layout that Jenny is using. I saw this and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna use this, but with a twist, because I can never just use something the way that it's intended to. I want to use a traveler's notebook. So I bought this, but this inspired me seeing that they made a new journal kit. In theory, he should still be tired, but in practice, he's like, I'm so bored. So seeing that they made this kit, I really love stamps. Knowing that I would be getting these stamps made me jump and finally think about, what do I actually want in a book journal? What is it supposed to look like? So I took some quick notes. I want to put the title. What do I want to capture? How do I want it to look like? I knew that if I wanted to include a printout of the book cover, which this space originally is, or in Jenny's journal, she puts the cover, a picture of the cover right here. If I wanted to include the cover, because the Traveler's Notebook is much smaller, much narrower than an A5, it would be cutting into the space that I have to document. So do I want to include the book cover? Will this keep me from entering my books? What do I want my layout to look like? Because this is nice, but maybe it's not going to work for me because I don't want to document the things that maybe Jenny documents. So I just briefly looked and thought about it a little, and then I came up with this. So I already, I think, put in my grid, and to the half of the book is already penciled in. So there's a lot of pages left. I believe that this will last me at least 2 years. I counted the lines. I wanted to use a aligned book too. So I counted the lines. I found that it would, if I divided these by 3, this sounded like the best thing. Then I eyeballed how big I wanted the space for the book cover to be. It made more sense to me to take space away from the notes section. So if I'm looking here and compare this, it made most sense to me to take away from this longer section right here where I write about the book, because I usually don't have a lot of thoughts about books. So instead of taking away from the title and all the other information that I want to log up here, I decided to take away from this space, which made sense to me. Might not work the way for you, but to me, this made the most sense. Why I'm showing you this and why I'm talking about this so much is because you don't have to buy a book to make a grid and to make a layout and then having it work for you. For anything that you want to do, to document, to log, this could be a daily journal entry for all I care, with a photo or something, you know. Now let me tell you why I decided to add the book covers. Here it is. This is one book. I know exactly how much space I will use up. So if I have more thoughts, if a book is really wrangling with me in a specific way, this information would go into my regular creative journal, because that's where it went since the beginning of the year. This is my log, and then I have there is so much emotion involved. I need to write about this in my journal type of book entry. So I'm never going to put that type of entry into here. So this is enough space. I'm giving myself this much space, and I will show you entries later. And if I don't have the cover, that's fine, because the next entry is here. The next entry is here. So I can collect all the entries, all the book covers in a collage in my PicMonkey or whatever photo editing software you are using or application. And then when that collage is full, I can print it out all in one go and stick it in later on. So what I did one weekend at the end of May is I sat down, went through my Libby app, which is where most of the books that I've read I am consuming through the Libby app, wrote a list, and then went through and went on the internet and downloaded the images of the books that I have read. So for instance, this one I forgot, so this is going to be in the next printout. And then I put in the titles for all the books. I had a huge list that now I've not completely backfilled, but I backfilled all the titles in here. So I started this before this review journal came in, and so I was thinking of incorporating the stamps, but I didn't know what exactly I wanted. And so now let me tell you about what I am documenting. So this was the first test spread. It changed a tiny bit from here. I underlined or divided all of these lines with my pen before. Now I don't anymore. I also moved this set all the way on the bottom, so this was the edge, and now I moved it up so it's in between these two lines here. I hope you can see this. So I am putting down the title. Yes, it is basically doubled up because I also have the title of the book on the cover, but especially when I'm backfilling the covers in one go, it is much easier to know. And I like having the title as the top entry for this book, because then I know what I'm looking at. I'm putting the genre right here, the format that I'm listening to, and I need to go back and fill those in, putting the publishing date up to next to the title, like so. So let me show you another entry. Yeah, some things have changed. So this is the publishing date, goes in the same line as the title. Then the genre, the format that I'm listening, or most of the time I'm listening, but maybe I'm reading it with a book. So I'm also distinguishing not just between audiobook, but also hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. And then in the same line as the format, I will put my star rating. I have not come up with a good solution for my star rating. I recently asked on Discord my friends how they were rating the books, and I definitely do not want to go super deep. I don't want to analyze the length and the structure and any of that and contribute to my star rating. My rating will most likely be something like 1 star is I should have DNF'd this book. 2, I don't really want to recommend this book to anyone, but I read it. 3 is it was okay, but maybe it's not for a broad audience. 4 is a book that I would recommend to anyone if they asked me about it. And 5 would probably be one that I would talk about to someone and recommend it out of my own volition. And 5 would also be books that stick with me for a long time, kind of type deal. Like just the basic of ratings. Nothing that, again, will stop me. I do want to have a rating because I feel like I want to filter while reading. I want to filter out what is working for me and what is not working for me. Similar to my fountain pens and inks, when I rate the pens and the combination and all of that, I do want to have a tiny bit of a record of that as well, because that will help me pick better books for myself in the future. And then I want to write my thoughts on the book. It is not going to be a summary. It is not going to be a huge review in the sense of this worked, this didn't work, an analysis or anything. This is just my thoughts right after reading the book. So, for instance, with T.J. Klune, Somewhere Beyond the Sea, I wrote, I loved falling back into the world created by T.J. Klune. At times, the book felt preachy. It left a bad aftertaste and got better when I started treating it as an epistula, a guidebook for parenting. Maybe it's just me personally. Maybe I'm not a good parent, or maybe I felt called out quite a bit. I had a hard time with this book. Even though I really loved it, I needed the pointing the finger at the bad guys was very, it was just so there. I noticed. So, but I don't want to talk about the books as much as I want to talk about the structure and the system of this journal. I am really liking it so far. So what I did over that weekend when I was obsessed with this is I put in the grid so far ahead that I wouldn't stop filling it in, and that I can take time to add more before I'm running out of grid spaces. The only thing that I need is the downstrake, the divider between the thing here. So I have 6 more books, 12 more books before I need to add that in. And then, and I think I'm just gonna go, I think I'm just gonna fill in the whole book at one go, just so that I'm not going to stop using this because I haven't filled in the grid, if that makes sense. I don't want to stop myself from using this because of a technical issue. So I filled in all the titles so that I would know how many spaces I would need, and that I would be able to add in the books that I'm currently reading or that I just finished. So I didn't think I would get this far, but I was able to backfill everything up to here, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books are left to fill in before I'm caught up with all the books that I have read mostly listened to in 2025. For me, listening to an audiobook or reading an actual book is mostly the same. And I am using Storygraph and Goodreads to find the genre. I am not putting in all the things that are there in either one of those reading apps, because I am just what I feel like is the most standout genre to me. Because again, I can then find similarities and things that stand out that worked or didn't work for me. Once the stamps came in, I started using them for the places that I want them to. So I want to add the stars here. I don't think I'm going to stamp in the star rating. I'm just going to fill it in by hand with the pen that I'm already using. I am stamping in the genre, the thoughts, and the stars. And that's all I'm using from this stamp set for now. Maybe that will change one day. Maybe I'm going to use this in a different journal, but this is what I am documenting. In the beginning, as you can see, I used a lot of different colors of pens. I basically used 2 pens for each book, the title, and then I wrote everything else with a different color. But that looked very out of place, too much, not too much input, like there's too much going on this page, and I cannot really discern what is going on here. So once I was done with this, so these are basically my trial pages here, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to use one pen for the titles and another one for the rest. And this now looks much more cohesive. And even though the title pictures of all of those books, the book covers, title pictures, oh my gosh, the book covers are very colorful. Maybe this is not a good example because they're so muted here. The book covers are very colorful. It still doesn't stand out and, like, you know, hit you in the face with colorfulness as much as this one does. So what I've been doing is I'm picking 2 pens for each of the spreads, and then I'm switching it up. I still get to use all of my fountain pens, just not for every entry. And yeah, each spread holds 6 books. What I really love is the FA nib from Pilot for the titles. I love how that looks. So yeah, this is what my book journal looks like right now. And now I thought, because we're almost at the end of the first half of 2025, I think it's like 1 or 2 more weeks until we start with the second half of 2025. Can you believe it? I thought I would give you 3 of my favorites of 2025 so far. 1 book that did not work for me, and 2 books that I have read recently. So, my top favorite of this whole first 6 months of 2025 is A Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. This is a historical fiction, a thriller. There are definitely some triggers. There is rape, but also a very powerful woman's story, which is something that I have figured out throughout reading or filling in this journal, that I'm very drawn to powerful women books. This one is definitely about a powerful woman. I'm just going to read you my thoughts. It's not, again, a setup of a book, so you would have to Google it yourself and read about it. I wasn't sure if this was the right book for the right time, because this takes place mostly in the winter time, and it is really hot and sunny where I am right now. I listened to this while it was sunny outside and I was sweating, but it was so good that after I listened to the first maybe 10%, I decided, you know what, I am just going to make it happen. It is quite long. I think it's 18 hours, if I'm not mistaken. And this was a skip the line book from my library. So I have 7 days to finish it. And I didn't start it right when I borrowed it from the library. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to borrow it and start listening and see if I still want to keep the hold and listen to this then later in the year. But once I started listening to it, I was like, oh my gosh, I am committed. This is so good. I need to keep listening. And so I just kept nonstop listening while I was cooking. Usually when I'm watching YouTube for entertainment, I was listening to the book. And I wasn't just listening, like I was paying attention. So I absolutely loved this novel. I was hooked from the beginning. A midwife, a mystery, women who break out of the norm and take charge. This was a win for me. Current favorite, this might actually even be an all-time favorite. I would love to put this somewhere in here, but I haven't found a really good way of adding this here without, covering something up. So if you have an idea on how I could add this in here, that would be awesome. This was amazing. I already recommended it to my sister. I told my husband about this book and how much I loved it. It was awesome. Another book that really worked for me, and I was kind of scared that it might not, is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. It's another historical fiction. It's a mystery, it's literary, and it's a family drama. I listened to it. It was published July 2nd, 2024. The Frozen River was published December 5th, 2023. It is a story that is told in two timelines. Both are in the past. One is in the 1970s, and the other one is probably more to the end of the 50s, I believe. The story is told in two timelines. It's an intricately layered, character-driven mystery, is in quotes, so I copied it down from Storygraph. I had a book hangover after this book. The mistreatment of women stood out to me. Again, women in history. This one wasn't women necessarily taking charge, but it was also pointing out how far we've come and how many rights women have right now. Not anymore, not as many. But how women didn't have a say at all. And it did not change hundreds of years ago. This changed so recently that a story that is told from the 1950s and 1970s still shows how oppressed women actually were. Which, is capturing me. And so here's a tangent really quickly. While I was filling in this book, I was able to determine some, through lines to what fascinates me in books and what I like about books, and when a book stands out to me a lot, because I was able to, see so many mysteries, historical, women, all of this is coming out when I'm filling in this book. So even if you don't really want to write a huge review, just collecting that data, it doesn't really necessarily have to be in a book. You could also do this in a spreadsheet, probably even better, because then the spreadsheet would already evaluate this for you instead of me having to go in and do that myself and, find all of those themes. So yeah, The God of the Woods, I was, riveted is a good word for it. I really loved it. And book hangover material. The interesting thing is about after The Frozen River, even though it was amazing, my book hangover wasn't as big as it was here. And then the last one of my top 3 that really worked well for me is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. It was great in many different ways. It was one of the first paper books that I actually read this year. I'm having a really hard time reading paper books, but the experience with this one was just so good that maybe this is what pushed it so high on my favorites ranking, is because I went into a bookstore, I picked the book, I had a physical copy of it, I could hug it, I could spend time with it, I could have a bookmark in there and open it up and read it. it felt really special. When I was a teenager, for years, I would borrow from my local library, which was a tiny library. I would go, they would only open on Tuesday afternoons. I would go and I would borrow 7 books for the week, 1 spare one, and 1 mystery. Most of the time it was maybe Agatha Christie, or we had a book series called Die 3 Fragezeichen, which is the 3 question marks. And the spare one was if any of the books that I picked for each day of the week didn't work out. And then the mystery, just if one of the books I was done really quickly, so I could read that too, but I would read a book a day-ish. Yeah. So, and I would have those book experiences. I was an avid reader with paperbacks and hardcovers because none of the other things existed yet. And this experience was just so stand alone and stand out. I bought it at one of my favorite bookstores as well. So there's a lot of memories attached to the reading experience of this book. However, Suzanne Collins is also an author that I have loved because she also wrote Gregor the Overlander, and there is a German, and it's not an audiobook per se, it's more of a audiobook production where there is different voices for the different characters. There's some music behind it. It's not a play per se, but it's like this in-between thing, and I loved listening to the German version of Gregor the Overlander. And what I loved about Gregor the Overlander is stuff that people actually criticized, because she is not someone to sugarcoat what is happening. So if stuff is really hard, it is going to be hard in the book. And it is not your normal happy ending, because these people are, whatever, the creatures in the books are traumatized. They're not going to live happily ever after. And I love that about Suzanne Collins. And so when I read Sunrise on the Reaping, which is a prequel to the 3 or even 4 Hunger Game books, it is the story of Haymitch, who is one of the main characters in the Hunger Games, the original 3. I just immediately felt at home in the world that I already knew, even though it was such a long time since I read the books. And I loved her realistic approach. Even though it's dystopian, even though there is a happy ending, we know Haymitch survives. It is not your they lived happily ever after happy ending. And I just appreciate that so much about this author. So let me read. I bought this book on our trip to Monterey at the Santa Cruz bookshop. This book worked for me. I love that Suzanne Collins doesn't write happy endings. Still sad that Haymitch lost even though he won. I mean, you know what happens in the Hunger Games. I hope didn't spoil it for me. For you, I didn't spoil it for me. I loved the book. It was so good. And if you haven't read it, I hope you'll give this a chance. Now I'm super curious about the other Hunger Game book. what was it called? Tried listening to it on audio. It did not work for me, so I just returned it. I'm going to try and read it, which is a story about what is it? President, Chancellor, the President Snow. So these were the three top favorite books of the first 6 months of the year. Some other things that really worked for me is mysteries, whodunits, the British Agatha Christie type stuff, series. I really love series because I'm extremely drawn, and I will accept a book that maybe isn't as great just because it's part of a series, because I take the knowing the characters over the greatness of the book. Women in history, strong women. Yeah, that's basically what I love. And I also really like romances. They're kind of like those palate cleansers for me. The book that did not work for me, and if I had known the one tag that I saw immediately when I opened up Goodreads, I probably wouldn't even have read it. And this is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver. It is horror. So this is the number one thing that I shouldn't have chosen. I tried because sometimes horror might work. Thriller. And the one thing that should have told me off is there are some paranormal elements in this book. I listened to this and I wrote, had I checked Storygraph, I probably would have been able to notice right away that this is not for me. Paranormal normally doesn't work. So that was the book that did not work for me. And then the most recent books that I read, I haven't put it in here. I'm on the last few pages, is a graphic novel by, now I don't remember his name, I'm going to put it on here, is New Kid. This is a middle grade graphic novel about the experiences of, also don't know his name, in a middle school where the boy is one of the only Black children, and his experiences in that middle school, the first year of middle school there. It is a Newbery medal. I don't know if a winner or just a honorable mention. I found this book through the banned books, and I really enjoy it. And then after The Frozen River, I was very drawn to, so maybe I did have a book hangover, I just filled it with noise. 2 romances back to back. It's not something that I should be doing. Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. And I thought it was the 3rd book of a series, but it's actually the first one in a new series. And the other one is Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. I read her debut romance novel last year, which was called Ready or Not. And I really love her writing style. So if I had to weigh them out, I would rate Promise Me Sunshine a little bit higher than Say You'll Remember Me. Promise Me Sunshine deals with grief. Say You'll Remember Me is also grief, but it is really complex. So the female side deals with dementia in a parent. The male main character deals with physical and emotional abuse. It's also going to be a long distance relationship, so there's a lot of baggage that is playing into this romance. So if you want a light book, a light romance book. Maybe this isn't it. Maybe this isn't it either. But in Promise Me Sunshine, the main character, which is, to me, it's the female is the main character. And even though in a romance there is a male, or there is two that get together in the end, in this book it felt to me like the female character was the main character. It's the same in Ready or Not. There is a lot more focus on the female experience in this book. Both are heterosexual romances, and the main character, the female lead, is very emotional. No, that's really hard. Like, when she's happy, she's really happy. She's funny, but she is grieving the loss of her best friend, and she's also very sad. So the spectrum is huge, and it was just very up and down, just because her emotions affected her so much. But it was also really, like, that's also what drew me into this book and made me stick with it, is just how deep she was in all of her feelings. Okay, this is it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time and listening to me talk about my books. I hope you enjoyed the last part where I told you about my favorites. If this is something that you like me do more often, let me know. I would probably either do another one at the end of the year and talk about the next 6 months and what my favorites were and what didn't work and what I read recently. If you want me to, I usually try to just mention the book that I'm currently reading or listening to in my snippets from my desk videos. If you're still here and if you're interested, I would love to do a paper test on this book. Because maybe once this is full, I will use this. You know what I also thought? This could also be a really cool, like, well, this would also be a review, but if you do meals, you could just quickly rate them. But I thought that this would also be a really cool way of memory keeping or daily journaling in a very, very abbreviated fashion. Maybe a sticker here or a photo if you're like, if you have stuff that you can print out from your day. It could be a photo right here, and then a small snippet here, maybe the date up here. And I love putting titles, so I would put a title here. Don't know what I would be using this for, but maybe the activity or the thing or an emotional something. I don't know. But that was something that I was like, this could also even work as a daily journal. So I'm gonna use the last page here. Maybe if I use this, it's gonna be heavy enough. And then I'm just gonna use my currently inked pens to see what happens. So I'm just gonna write here, this is a Hogtown's pens. The writing feels okay. It's a little toothy, but it's not bad. This is an extra fine nib and inked with Pilot. Oh, if this is Shizuku, if this is fountain pen friendly, this would ink swatch here. Not sure, maybe a rating, pen name, ink name, maybe the squiggly lines, and then your rating, your verbal rating here. So I'm curious to see what happens. So where's all of my fountain pens? Right here. So I want to use a variety. Maybe this one works too. This is a Lamy 2000 with a fine, but it's much broader than this one. And this one is Troublemaker. Hanging Rice. I just want to put some ink in one spot, so where this one is super light, unfortunately. Oh, I have a wet. No, this is not the right one. This one. Oh, I could use my flex nib. This is a Skogsy. This puts down a lot of ink because it's a double broad Choya. Double broad. And this is Ink Institute, and I don't remember the name. So I'm doing double ink just to see what happens. And then let me use this. Here's my FA nib. This is a Mayfair. If this paper works with fountain pens, it doesn't need to show a lot of shading. Just, I don't want bleed through on the other side. I would stock up on these. These is so nice. Mayfair pens. Naria. And this ink is Amarillo. Blue Suntan. So now for the big reveal, I thought I wanted to put this one down here as well. This is a Talisman. Ooh, ooh. I think the thing wasn't closed all the way. Talisman from Benu. Let's just go brute force and dip it in water. From Benu with a medium nib, and the ink is Vinta Umber, and this is a shimmer ink. So now, big reveal. No, there is ghosting, but not a lot, and no bleed through. And I am calling that a win. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time and checking out this journal with me and looking at all the things that I shared. I hope to see you again in another video soon. Until then, bye.